So now I want to go on to the topic of having children, because that's something people think about, and I've thought about in the past. If I met a guy, for example, he was Muslim or something like that, and I'm thinking, okay, if we have a kid, you're going to want the kid to keep your, practice. And honestly, I felt like I would fail if I had a kid and they didn't believe in Christ. They didn't, that kind of thing. So I really would take that to heart. So it's like I knew I couldn't date someone of that type of, religion. So my question is, in terms of, children and having, is that something you guys are concerned about? Like if you're dating someone and she's outside of your denomination, are you guys okay with the kids not being Seventh Day? Like if, the kids go to church on Sunday, if they don't, like, what do y'all think about that when it comes time to, child rearing?
Let me go real quick. It's 100% a factor, and when you're planning on, getting married and having children, definitely when it comes to a completely different religion, to me it's just not doable. I could not marry someone who's Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever, because it's just not going to make sense. Now, I mentioned earlier that I sought to find a girl who was within Church of God Seventh Day, but I don't necessarily believe it has to be. I think if I find, or anybody finds a Christian, if you believe in Jesus and that's how you're saved, I think that's the most important thing. Some of the other details can be, discussed and figured out. I don't think they're as major, but the faith in Jesus Christ has to be the number one thing. So honestly,
100%.
If that's there, I think if you guys can talk through the other things that are different and come to an agreement on it, then that's really what's the most important thing for me.
Okay, so you think like the Seventh Day versus Sunday, you're okay if your child grew up and did not keep the Sabbath? Are you okay with that?
So it's interesting. It probably would bother me because that's what I believe and that's how I would definitely raise my children. But I do think at a certain point, obviously, once they're an adult, they get to make their own choices and decisions. I would definitely love them to stay in the Seventh Day Church, but if they decided to go to a Sunday church, I think as long as they are devout and staying true to what the gospel is about, serving Jesus, then that's the most important thing. But I'm not gonna lie, it'd probably bother me a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, is because you don't want to tell the kid, oh, I know mommy said Sunday was okay, but this is the real truth. Let me tell you the real truth. It's like,
yeah,
you know what?
Well, I would never even talk about it that way too, because that's even something I've discussed with my fiance now. Is like, people who go to church on Sunday, honestly, there's a whole stuff about the Sabbath. We actually just talked about that recently on our podcast, so check out that. But there's plenty of folks who go to church on Sunday who are extremely devout and are serving Jesus with all their heart. And I believe, for a lot of them, I don't think they know about the history of Sabbath being changed from Saturday to Sunday and things like that. They're just not aware of it, right? Now, if you are aware and you continue to do it, that's a different discussion. But for many of them, they're not aware. And truth be told, you can keep the Sabbath and go to church on Sunday if you want to, right? Because going to church is not what the Sabbath is about, right? We remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. We do good things on the Sabbath and everything like that. But you can go to church any day of the week if you want. So who's to say there aren't certain people going to church on Sunday, but they do keep the Sabbath on Saturday? They just want to go to church on Sunday. Like, I know people in my church who do that. They come to church Saturday and they go Sunday because they want another dose.
What do you guys think?
I agree. I'm only DTH. With that, I think one of the biggest taboos that people don't talk about is finances and religion. Like, that's the first thing that should be discussed before you even get involved with someone. Because it would bother me in a sense, because just like my boy is like, I grew up in the Seventh Day Church with that, but I just want to make sure ultimately that my children know who God is at the end of the day, because it doesn't matter really where they're, as long as they're in the church and they fear God. You know what I mean? I'm doing injustice by them not knowing who God is as a parent.
Okay. So it's interesting. So you guys kind of, it seems like, there's a general theme here that it's more about the connection and the relationship with God more so than an actual religion. which is interesting. And I love that because that is kind of different from the old school way of thinking, right? Where it was like, they even had those songs,
Absolutely.
like, the Church of God is the only true church, like they had songs and that was their whole thinking. But, it seems like it's really different now. People are more in terms of depth and what your true connection is. Did you guys, anyone else wanted to add anything you could add right now?
Yeah, I wanted to just hop in real quick, just to add into the children question real quick. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to just add, like, it's definitely feel like it's important to have someone who kind of at least understands when it comes to the Sabbath specifically, and like, has maybe like a good understanding of that. And then, as DTH said, once they're taught, you know what I'm saying, they might develop a love for it, they might not, but you can't really control that. And
Exactly.
obviously me, likewise, I would love for them to have a love for, the Sabbath like I do. But in the same vein, like I myself, I consider myself a child of God and all that, but I don't find myself in a building every single Sabbath, myself. I go as much as I can, but not every single Sabbath. I'm in a building myself, but I'm still reverencing the Sabbath. So, as long as they understand maybe some aspects of that, I think I can survive.
Yeah.
And that's why I say to, if you're going to venture out, to do so with caution, because I mean, you got to know yourself first and foremost. Like if you are easily persuaded when it comes to relationships, then don't put yourself in a situation where now you're going to have to be considering like whether love or spirituality, because now you're susceptible of falling for whatever your mate wants to do. Like,
Hey,
I think it's important that you know yourself for real, because these are real complications. And when we talking about like the soul and men being responsible for their households, like it's important that your children is following, the same breath of what you believe according to what the Bible says. So, venture out
yeah,
with caution.
he definitely right about that, because I was gonna mention this a little earlier, that we seen the fall of Samson. The strongest man in history was because of what?
Woo!
A woman. And we see Solomon, whose heart was right with God. He asked for wisdom, but the man had 1,000 women to himself, 700 wives, 300 concubines. So, and these women took his heart away from a relationship with God that was pure. So, you definitely have to be strapped up with the armor of God.
Ooh, yeah, it's really important. Okay. So, what about last thing, and then you guys could tell me if you have any final thoughts. But what popped in my mind was, I noticed that when I would speak with, let's say, Sunday worshipers too, would be things like holidays. Like some people are like huge with Christmas. Like the Christmas is like, if they don't celebrate it, this is something that is like a deal breaker for some folks. How do you guys perceive the day-to-day things like holidays, just those kinds of things? Would those be issues, when you're trying to date someone that's not a 7-day,
Yeah.
Yes.
It definitely. Well, hold your point. I'm going first.
Hey.
I definitely agree. It's a yes. Like what I was saying earlier. In the past, people have dated in terms of understanding that that wouldn't have been an issue. It's in that same vein. Like they weren't someone who was all up in the Christmas lights, and they're not someone who's going to put a Christmas tree up in my house and do things that are not in line with that, would obviously mess with my soul and my spirit and all that. They weren't someone who would do stuff like that. And I think it's the same vein. You can't have someone who's going to be, heavily, into it, and they want to do all these things and they want that, and you have no interest in it and whatever, especially when it comes to holidays and stuff like that, because people want to involve their family, people want to involve their entire life. And for you to not be involved in those things, it's going to create rifts. Like it's going to create rifts. There's going to be some types of separation that you don't want in your relationship.
And things like food, like if you don't want to cook pork for the dude because
exactly.
It's like all kinds of
there has to be a level of understanding. Like there has to be a level of understanding, even if they're not a stout Church of God, blah blah blah. But there has to be a level of understanding in my head.
Yeah. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah,
Levi pretty much said it. There has to be an understanding. Of course, I have to draw the line, like no Christmas trees, none of that, in the house, because it's too far gone, especially when you know better. Like, so is it gonna be easy if you date outside of your religion? No, right? But you have to know who you deciding to link yourself with too, right? You have to know that you have a person that is willing to, like, understand, like, yo, this really means a lot to me if we don't do this, right? And so yeah, that's my opinion on it. And then
Yeah.
especially the same thing with the food. I mean, of course, there's also like studies showing like certain foods that's not even like good for you. So
Mhm.
you don't even have to go that deep with it. So
Yeah, I just want to, put that all out there because that's things people probably aren't thinking about. Like, the day-to-day, those kinds of things and holidays and things like that can really affect how you feel, especially when you bring kids into the situation, right? Like you trying to tell your kids that Christmas isn't real, Santa and Christ wasn't born that day, but your spouse is having a whole tree and giving gifts and you know what I mean? It's just there's so many, ways that you might have issues. Caesar, I think you wanted to chime in too. I think you were trying to say.
No, I mean, yeah, I think everybody just kind of hit it, but I mean, that's the whole point of like the Bible just warning us of not being unequally yoked, because it's just unnecessary like strife and resistance that you're gonna have in your place of peace when there's already strife and resistance waiting for you when you step out the door.
Mm.
So it's like, it's like you trying to get down the road and both of you guys need to be going down the same direction, but one person is like you got to drag and carry the whole time. It just makes it harder.
Oof, okay. You guys have any final comments now? Anything y'all wanted to mention on the whole topic? And then I'll have y'all sign out, tell them again where they could find you guys, to follow you and watch your podcast as well. Any final thoughts for anyone thinking of dating outside of their religious denomination? Y'all could share with us now.
All right. Well, let me just say, I think it's a great topic. Had a great time. I think that for those who are looking to date and you want a relationship, definitely seek God first. Ask Him. Say, Lord, please, I'm looking for a young lady. I'm looking for a young man that I want to be able to have a relationship with, where we can honor you together. And,
Yes.
God is not going to leave you hanging, right? You have to have the right intention, and God will definitely help you out with that. So I think seek God and ask Him for the things that you want. And, it's going to come through.
it's good.
Okay, good. Ooh, love it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you kids, man. Seek God first, because he's the only one that's gonna guide you. He's gonna reveal things to you that you can't see. So therefore, at the end of the day, it's important to have that connection with God. And so all the single people out there, just like you're praying for somebody, somebody's praying for you. You just have to have that patience and allow that to happen. Don't rush nothing, man, because when you rush something, it's gonna blow up right in front of you. So at the end of the day, remember God's timing is not our timing, and just seek Him first, and everything else shall follow. You know what I'm saying?
Amen. Love it. Anybody else?
Well,
Go ahead.
I would just say know yourself and proceed with caution. Do not put yourself in a situation that you know you cannot handle. If you know you got a sweet tooth, stay out of the cookie shop or factory, whatever it is, and I mean, and that's gonna be the best way, because all you're gonna do is add more resistance and more stress to yourself that you don't already need. So,
Or diabetes.
but on top of that, man, we just want to say thank you again for having us on this show for with My Comfy Couch. You're gonna definitely have to come through to Hold Your Point when we have Women in Leadership Part 2 or something like that. But it's been a real pleasure. We appreciate it.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you guys. Thank you so much. I would love to be
Thank
there. Anybody else want to say anything in closing?
Nothing else. You did
You
great.
good?
Pleasure to
I got
have
one
us.
more.
Like,
I got one more.
subscribe.
Oh, sorry.
My bad, Levi. I just started this one on the while everyone else was talking. Make sure you properly evaluate your standards and make sure they're where they need to be.
Ooh.
Some people, their standards are just ridiculous.
Well,
So,
Now, David, you can't just
you
leave
know.
on that note and
sound
not
like a whole nother
elaborate.
pod, boy.
well, you're gonna have to come back for
Exactly.
part 2. You're gonna have to come back for part 2.
Lord,
You heard
yes.
that? You heard that?
That's a
Well,
whole episode for real.
That's it. Y'all heard it here, man. These guys said it all. I just want to encourage everybody to like, subscribe, the Hold Your Point podcast, Comfy Couch. Appreciate you having us. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank y'all. Thank you so much. So hold your point. Yes, hold your point. I'm gonna put y'all info on the bottom so people can check it out. But find them, look them up, and thank you guys so much. Keep the work going, okay? Please let me know how I could support y'all. Y'all go check out their podcast and support these men. Thank you guys again for being on the show.
Thank
And
you,
don't forget to
Nicole.
like, share,
We
subscribe,
appreciate
tell
you.
a friend, phone a friend, and we'll see you next time on My Comfy Couch.
We
Toodles.
out of here.